Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Ryan Suter. I'm one of the senior investment managers here at Sharewise, and we're here this morning with Tony Charara. He's been kind enough to lend us his time and expertise regarding his company, Tissue Repair Limited. Now, obviously, Tony is the CEO and co-founder of Tissue Repair. Now, as always, Tony's going to kick things off with a presentation regarding Tissue Repair, just an update and a bit of a company introduction, and then we're going to open the floor up to questions. So, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions you'd like me to ask Tony after the presentation, please submit them through using the Q&A function on Zoom, and then I will ask away. Tony, thank you for your time this morning, mate. The floor is all yours.
Great. Thanks very much, Ryan. Take you through a brief update on the company, a bit of an overview, and yeah, look forward to any questions you or your team might have. Okay, so a bit about Tissue Repair. I thought I'd start with just an overview of the technology, just a bit of a refresh. So we take a yeast cell, we take out all the proteins and the lipids, and we keep the skeleton of that yeast cell intact. And that's essentially our active ingredient, Glucoprime. When we place that ingredient inside an open wound, the body stimulates basically a TNF-alpha response, and it's a bit like a lock and a key. So we stimulate an inflammatory response. The body thinks it's a yeast infection, and as a result of that yeast infection, we kickstart the healing process. For a lot of the time since we co-founded the company, that was the extent of our understanding of the mechanism of action. We had this burst of TNF-alpha, which what this study refers to. This was back in 2011, done by Ohio State University. And TNF-alpha really just measures an inflammatory response. So we knew that the body was perceiving this as a threat, and as a result of that threat, it was drawing in macrophages to try and combat that threat. And that was really the extent of our understanding. And I thought I'd share with you some data from a very recent, few months old study from the University of South Australia. And if you see here, this is really a standard coordinated approach to healing. You know, there's sort of 4 stages. The inflammatory response was where we thought we were playing, which is this M1 macrophage. So this is the inflammatory phase. Every time you get a cut or a wound gets infected, the wound gets inflamed, and that inflammation phase quickly moves to a proliferative phase, which is essentially tissue generation, and then a remodeling phase. And that mechanism of action, in terms of the University of South Australia data, we used a mouse model. So you can sort of see here that very standard response. We reduced wound healing by about 30%. This is consistent with all our clinical data. And we measured essentially, we tried to measure what was happening from day 0 to day 7 in that wound. This is a microscopic data of that wound, so you can sort of see even more healing. So when you look under the scab, you can see these 2 charts here. You can see greater healing in the TR Pro, which is the blue, versus the pink, which is just the hydrogel without the active ingredient. And what was super interesting here was that although we elicit an early TNF-alpha response, if you look at day 7 in this chart here, the blue is TR Pro and the pink is a hydrogel. You can sort of see that we quickly move it out of an inflammatory response. In fact, there's less TNF-alpha at day 7 by a very significant amount in the blue chart versus the pink. And when you look even further, you can sort of see here this chart on the right here. This measures M2 macrophages. So this is a direct measure of us moving into the proliferative phase, if you think about the earlier chart. And you can sort of see we have double the amount of M2 macrophages versus in TR Pro, in the TR Pro affected wound, versus the hydrogel site, which doesn't have TR Pro. That is a really interesting response, because what it is essentially telling us is we have this burst of TNF-alpha, and then day 3 to day 7, we quickly accelerate the wound into this proliferative phase where you get tissue being laid down, collagen production, fibrosis. That transition to M1 and M2, I thought I'd take you through because it's very powerful, and it essentially applies to any wound in any human or animal. So the breadth of indications that TR Pro could be applicable to is very wide, because you've got this simple M1, M2 trigger that you're replicating in all these types of wounds. With that mechanism of action, although it applies to this massive breadth of wounds, we've really gone down two paths. One is chronic wounds, which is basically almost all the capital of the company is dedicated to, and that is now in phase 3. And I'll talk a little bit about that. So we had our first patient randomization. We're up to, we'll hopefully get to about 30 sites activated by April, and hopefully be in the throes of screening and volume in that trial. There hasn't been a drug approved in 25 years in chronic wounds. And then while we've essentially invested as our core thesis or value catalyst in that part, we really have a second business in TR Pro, which is this acute wounds. And we launched TR Pro in that market. It's based on the same technology that you've seen in Glucoprime. And that's really for acute wound, which is medical and aesthetic wounds. And we've recently got a TGA approval in Australia and are able to replicate that with similar low-level approvals in multiple markets as a device, really to go after those indications. And a bit about TR Pro. So we really just started in Sydney with a bit of a case study. For most of this period, we've had 1 to 2 reps. We now have 3.2 FTEs in this market and are experiencing about a 30% quarter-on-quarter growth. This is just targeting aesthetics. This is really for us to see, test the market, test how we sell the product, really to inform a bit more of a global expansion strategy and a more expanded Australian expansion strategy. I won't take you through this, but really great feedback from physicians. And if you go to our Instagram site, Tissue Repair Skin, you'll just see a whole host of user-generated content around the effectiveness of this product. Right from efficacy in terms of amplifying the quality of the wound post-anesthetic procedure. So this is after laser procedures, skin needling, anywhere a physician breaks the skin. Tissue repair is really a next generation, TR Pro is really a next generation aftercare product. That has built on this phase 2 study we did, which anyone familiar with the company would have seen, where we've showed double the quality of skin post a laser ablation. This was a double-blind placebo-controlled trial. It was an FDA phase 2 trial, and we showed essentially statistical significance in both wrinkling and elastosis. We've built upon that with an experiential program, which is basically about 50 patients that we observed. And you can sort of see here, an interesting chart here on the right, is that 85% of respondents perceived their skin was healing well or very well. And really interesting, about 100% of patients of those 50 people, or 48 people, basically said that their healing with TR Pro was as good or better than any post-procedures that they've done. So really great anecdotal data around the effectiveness of the product. I think when we floated the company, we didn't really have a handle on the size of the TR Pro. It was really a business we were testing, because most of the story and the narrative was down to drug approval in chronic wounds. But this gives you an idea. This is for the recent TGA approval we have. So this is across aesthetic procedures and acute procedures. And you can sort of see this is about $100 million market in Australia. And a 10% penetration, we think, would get us $11 million of revenue just in an Australian context. Australia is 2% of the global market. So this is a multi-billion-dollar market we sort of feel we have access to with TR Pro, with the caveat if we can replicate this low-level device approval approach in multiple markets. And I thought I'd bring it to life. These pictures aren't exactly great to look at, but this is an example of an indication for this is solar keratosis. This lady was using Effidex, and there is really no go-to post-procedure after this product. She used it one too many times, and the physician recommended her she use TR Pro, really great resolution of that wound. This is eczema, another acute wound. So this patient was not having much luck with a lot of the steroidal products used for eczema. Really great resolution with TR Pro that the mother of this child experienced. This is dermatitis between the fingers. Again, patient reported really great soothing. It reduced itchiness and following this really great recovery. These are all the types of indications that M1, M2 macrophage narrative could be applied to. we have a huge, if you go to our Instagram site, there is a huge number of these types of just anecdotal feedback about resolution in wounds, which mirrors the great clinical data we've got across chronic wounds. This is a virus which caused raised sores. This young boy had tried so many creams and ointments. Again, we got really great resolution using TR and burns. This is an example of a burn that's been treated with TR and great resolution over the first few days. So really quickly, it's a bit of the story we've got, and this is our product strategy shaping up, but we have TR which essentially is launched in Australia as a listed medicine, and we've launched in aesthetics and derm. We have our own very small workforce that we're building on, and then our approach is really to try and distribute on all the medical acute wounds that you've just seen some examples of previously. While we're doing that, we're really trying to launch in these other markets as a device, again with the TR product line, and that will allow us to go into aesthetics and the medical side. You can sort of see here the drug TR987, we're going for drug approval in the US. If you'll see the two US narratives here, I think what a device allows us to enter the market in the US ahead of a drug approval. So we never thought that pathway was available to us when we floated the company, but that will allow us to enter the product in the US market ahead of the phase 3 outcome. And the story it's essentially telling you is we have what we feel is quite a large business within TR which we're trying to commercialize independent of this outcome of a phase 3 outcome. So I think it's a great hedge in the company that the management team and us are trying to really deliver on. Just quickly, I'll finish off with TR987, which is most of the capital. This is the drug phase 3 trial. Pleased to announce our first patient randomization. What are we trying to achieve here? There hasn't been a drug approved in chronic wounds in about 25 years. So this is a really massive prize. It's an arduous prize, but if you can achieve it, there is a really significant value catalyst that will flow. And we feel like given the clinical data that we have, which is basically here, we've shown a plus 20% improvement in incidence of complete closure between the vehicle and the active arm. And that is the gold standard FDA endpoint. Any clinician will tell you if you show a 20% delta, that is, exceptional efficacy and puts us in line to have a sort of a frontline therapy for chronic wounds. And in this example is venous leg ulcers. I think I'll pause there, Ryan, but that's a bit of an overview of the company and the two markets that we're going.
Yeah, brilliant. Thank you for that, Tony. It looks like you guys are really heading in the right direction. So obviously, we've got a couple of questions here that will just kick us off. Again, ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions for me to ask Tony, just submit them using the Q&A function. So after you gave us a brief overview of the market potential of TR987, I'd just love for a bit of an exploration into why you guys think it's so unique. Obviously, you mentioned there hasn't really been any big breakthroughs in the past 20 years. And how is this going to lead to, really high levels of market potential?
Yeah, so look, there are a lot of next generation wound products out in the market based on really complicated advanced technology. None of them have really got into the mainstream. I think mostly because of cost and the clinical requirement to get in. Like some of them are complicated devices that need a physician. When you go to your pharmacy and you ask for something to improve healing, all that technology is very old.
Yeah,
there's nothing that actually stimulates an immune response. So what we feel we have is a universal healing agent that really has an immunogenic effect in the sense that it stimulates the immune response to accelerate healing, which we went through. And that applies to any animal or human. So the fact that we can reformulate this as a cost-effective frontline therapy for wound healing is what we're excited about. And that in a nutshell is, I think, is the opportunity that we have. And if we can the breadth of indications that this can apply to, combined with this idea of its efficacy versus cost, I think are the two main factors which we feel, make it very unique in the market. It's not stem cells. It's not a complicated device. It's topical. It can be stored at room temperature. It can be applied by the consumer or the physician. And all those things combined mean it's got, very large potential in a market that really hasn't had a lot of innovation that's actually delivered on the promise.
Okay, awesome. Well, obviously, it does feel like, based on the way it was presented, that there are two businesses in tissue repair, right? Obviously, there's the TR Pro product, and then obviously TR987. Now, with both of them, obviously TR Pro seems pre-existing. Can you just run us through what the structure of that business is, and then obviously, TR87, how's that going to progress moving forward?
Yeah, so look, when we floated the company, it was all about the drug. Most of the narrative was TR987 getting into phase 3, which we've done.
Yeah.
I think we put a small amount of capital in TR Pro Plus.
Yeah.
And really that was to prove the market out. Like, can we have, it was launched as a cosmetic, so it didn't have any regulatory pathway to really make claims. We managed to get one with the TGA. And what we found in that case study was it's in about 300 clinics. The level of adoption is really strong. The anecdotal feedback and the experience mirrors all the clinical and mechanism of action data that we have.
Yeah.
So we've tried to validate a business and a product so that we can take all those learnings and see if we can expand that globally with distribution partners. And that's really what we're trying to do. So it's been maybe 18 months in terms of validating. We feel like we have validation, and now we're actually exploring distribution opportunities with active discussions. Hopefully Q4 we'll be able to announce a distribution partner for the medical side of the TGA. So that's going into pharmacy and really applying to all acute wounds. And really the pathway for that is to try and replicate that strategy with distribution partners globally. So we've started with a few in Southeast Asia, and we've really focused on a low-level device approval in the US. So that's that product. And that could be a multi-billion-dollar global TAM if we can replicate those low-level approvals that we've done here in Australia.
Yeah.
TR987 is really, we're essentially taking the value catalyst is your phase 3 readout. All we're trying to do is replicate the efficacy signal we got in phase 2, which was this sort of 20% difference in incidence of complete closure. And so we sort of feel we have a shot on goal because we're not changing too many parameters going from phase 2 to phase 3. We're just trying to replicate the trial design with phase 2 with a significant number of patients to drive to statistical significance.
Yeah, okay, brilliant. Well, thank you for the clarification there. Now, obviously, as you mentioned throughout the presentation, obviously, the chronic wound treatment market in Australia, $3.5 billion, pretty significant one. How do you guys plan on breaking in?
Well, I think we have a pathway already with TR Pro for the Australian market. So that approval that we have with the TGA, I think gets us into acute wounds. I think it also gets us into hard to heal wounds. So wounds that are not necessarily chronic, but could be a pressure ulcer, a VLU, or a diabetic foot ulcer that may resolve a little bit more quicker. So we're really excited to see work with the partners that we have to really try and drive those markets with the current low-level approval that we have with the TGA product. Obviously, if we get FDA approval on our phase 3 trial, we'll be applying to the TGA for a label in chronic wounds. So that's the other big catalyst, and that will mean that label essentially powers reimbursement here in Australia, which I think would be really exciting because not a lot of these complex advanced wound therapies are reimbursed by Medicare here.
Yeah.
So I think we could be one of the first sort of frontline therapies for chronic wounds with drug quality data to show, and given our cost of production, our efficacy versus cost, I think is really excellent. And I think with the focus in the US healthcare markets around efficiency of healthcare spend, I think we have a really nice narrative with that. So in summary, I think we've got a short-term strategy with TR Pro Plus to access those markets, followed by a more powerful strategy once we get our phase 3 trial readout to get a label here in Australia for those indications.
Yeah. Okay. Well, thank you for that clarification. Now, obviously, you showed a bit of a map, and you mentioned expanding internationally. Now, obviously, it sounds like you've got a bit of penetration into the Southeast Asian market, but also moving to the US. What's the main priority, and where is the next kind of progress internationally going to come from?
Yeah, so we actually haven't entered those markets yet. So our core markets would be sort of US and a couple of, I think you've got Malaysia and Singapore, maybe South Korea that we're looking at. So our priority is device approval. right? And at the same time as we're looking at those markets for device approval, we're also looking at potential distribution partners. So we'll take all our learnings here on how to sell the product and really try and educate and partner with a distributor with an existing sales force that are speaking to these end users to drive distribution. So I don't think we want to replicate owned distribution infrastructure in those markets. So that's essentially the pathway. I think the catalyst is, can we get a device approval? We think we have a pathway forward. And I think there are any number of distributors that will find this product attractive, given that it really fills a gap in the market. The US, we have a clear pathway for a device. We're hoping by the end of the year to put that application in. It's a 510K application.
Yep.
And that will open up derm and chronic and some chronic wound markets and potentially reimbursement. So that's a bit more of a long dated play, but still it's more near term than getting a readout on phase 3 and going down that whole drug path.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you for that clarification update there. Now, you guys recently had a media release which mentioned the 60% reduction in wound area in phase 2 trials. How confident is tissue repair in replicating these results in the larger phase 3 trial? And what are going to be the key milestones investors should be looking at in the next 18 months?
Look, it's a great question. So that 60% that was a reduction in percent wound area across a meta-analysis of about 150 patients in phase 2. So it was statistically significant. And that mirrored also a bunch of signal in the individual trials. So we had basically a treatment effect of a 20% incidence in complete closure. I see no reason why we shouldn't be able to replicate that signal in a phase 3.
Yeah.
Obviously, when you go from phase 2 to phase 3, the reason why there hasn't been a drug approved is this is a complex disease with lots of factors which influence healing.
Yeah.
And it's been one of the challenges why not a lot of people have been able to get a phase 3 signal or a phase 3 approval.
Yeah.
But with all that data that we have around mechanism of action and the evidence around the clinical data we have, as well as all the data we're collecting around TR Pro, I think there's a reasonable degree of confidence in the company we'll be able to achieve, replicate that phase 2 signal. And just to be clear, we need to show phase 2 showed a 20% difference in incidence of complete closure.
Yeah.
We need to show 10%. So if we just show 10% in phase 3, most clinicians would say that's clinically efficacious.
Yeah.
And so there's a bit of a margin of safety we feel in terms of being able to show something that will generate value. The other hedge, though, is that if we can get our device approval, we can still enter that market, and there might be other signals in phase 3 around our secondary endpoints that we meet, which will be excellent device data. So it may not be great drug quality data, but will be excellent device data to really power a sale approach or for the device in those markets, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does. Brilliant. Thank you for that update. Now, just one more for me. Obviously, you did mention there being certain hurdles associated with it being hard to control for a phase 3 trial. Other than the ones you've just mentioned, are there any other significant regulatory disruptions that are recently going to hit the wound market, or where is tissue repair going to lie in its kind of sign of history and this sort of stuff?
Look, it's a great question. I think there is a huge amount of disruption hitting the reimbursement market for wound products. I think just recently, maybe a few hundred products were discontinued by Medicare for reimbursement. They are now, there's a handful of products that have been allowed. There's a huge amount of scrutiny now around efficacy data. And basically, to get reimbursement in the US now, you need to show efficacy data for a chronic wound.
Yeah.
And so a huge number of companies are embarking on clinical trials now to show that efficacy data so that they can get covered. So what does that mean for us? I think not a lot of companies have gone down the drug path because it wasn't needed historically. You could get a device approval simply, then you would just you do a sponsor funded trial. It wouldn't necessarily be drug quality data, and you'd start selling. I think it's validated the approach we've got. We've gone down this path of getting a drug label from the start to really try and show efficacy. And you'll see with the focus in US, particularly with RFK Jr.'s appointment, there's going to be a huge amount of additional scrutiny on Medicaid spend, cost versus efficacy. And I think that's one of the compelling things that, I sort of believe in the product, like the efficacy you get versus the cost. That equation, I think, I haven't seen another product that would show that compelling narrative.
Yeah.
And I think the regulatory tailwinds are really heading in our direction. So I'm interested to see how we progress with that. But that'd be my take on that question.
Yeah, well, thank you for that one. Now, just shifting to some live asked questions. An individual says, Tony, well done for your achievement to date. Is there potential for TR997, I presume, to be used in burn/used with burn teams?
There absolutely is. I guess our struggle, we're trying to commercialize with the two markets that we have. So chronic wounds, and then you have aesthetics and medical, so aesthetics and acute wounds, which I've sort of given you a list of. I think we can start to stretch into burns, but it's more about trying to deliver on those two markets. And if we can deliver on those two things, I think that creates, in my view, that creates most of the value for the company, a really significant amount of value. As I said, the breadth of applications for the technology is huge. We have got a limited amount of capital, a very limited amount of capital, and even those two initiatives we're doing, I think, are stretching myself and the team significantly. And so we're just focused on delivering on those two streams. If we were to have a capital event, you could really start launching multiple products in different indications powered by separate studies very quickly. But we just haven't got the capital to do that yet.
Okay. Now, we'll just move to the last one. A participant has asked, can we try any of the products now? And if so, how?
You can go to TR Pro Plus website and you can order it online. I've given it to lots of investors and they've all had great experiences with it. Like, it's probably one of the best things I do to get them to be excited about the product in terms of trialing it. Everyone I've trialed it, I've given it to has had a great experience. So encourage you to order a couple of tubes and apply it on some of those indications and see for yourself.
Mate, that's brilliant stuff. Awesome. Well, that about wraps everything else up, Tony. Is there anything you'd like to leave the investors with?
Look, the only comment is, I've had a few comments around our share price. I understand most of small caps are in quite a depressed state, but genuinely feel, we're a phase 3 trial, fully funded, and that difference between potential value and where we are now, I think there is a real dichotomy between that, and sort of feel there's a lot of embedded value in tissue repair and the execution that the team's trying to deliver. I think we've achieved on. So excited to see what happens going forward.
Brilliant. Well, Tony, thank you very much for your presentation and time today. It's been absolutely brilliant. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Cheers.
Great. Thanks, guys.